The opinions expressed on this program represent the viewpoints of individual authors or contributors and do not necessarily reflect those of Troy University. This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of the most powerful members of the state legislature and a very popular member of the legislature from Madison County, Representative Reynolds, who's chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. Rex, good to have you on the show.
Good to be here, Steve. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I've been doing this show 15 years, and about 5 years ago, I thought we just had a viewing audience of the river region and the Wiregrass, because that's what Troy Public Television.
Yeah.
But then I started having people from Huntsville say, Flowers, I saw you show with Governor Ivey or Young Boozer or somebody, this state senator or something, and I'd say, well, how did you see it? We're on YouTube.
Yeah.
So everybody sees us on YouTube now. But we are thankful you took time out of your schedule to be with us because, folks, he's in the middle of the session, and he writes the state general fund budget. Now, in the House of Representatives, and your co-partner in the Senate is Albritton.
It is Greg Albritton.
From Escambia, and then
Yep.
the edge of that. When I was in the legislature, Rex, there was only one Ways and Means Committee, and it was a real, but it's still powerful to be on the Ways and Means, especially chairman like you are. But they took education and the general fund. I don't know when they carved that out. It's probably been a decade ago.
It has. Yeah.
About a decade ago when they changed that. And so Arthur Orr from Decatur is chairman of education in the Senate, and then Danny Garrett from Trussville is your
That's
cohort right. in the House. But you've had your hands full. People don't realize what a tough and serious job that is writing the state budget. And I want to commend you for having that job and doing a good job as you do.
I appreciate that. Yeah, my freshman year as general fund chairman, when Speaker Ledbetter asked me to take over that role from my friend Steve Klaus, which I continue to go to this day, asking his thoughts about different budget items from time to time. But I remember that first year, so we had all that ARPA money. So I think I had about $1.06 billion in ARPA funds that year, and then moving, and we had the House started with the general fund that year, and I remember saying it sure would be nice to have a special session. Let me get this ARPA funds out of the way, and then we'll go in there. And it was a big year for me. We the colleagues supported me in paying off $60 million in debt, and then we also put another $500 million in the general fund reserve. So that was a big first year for me as chairman.
So what was your first term in the House?
2018.
And you were on Ways and Means, but you became chairman in 2022.
Yeah, Mac McCutcheon put me on. Speaker McCutcheon did in 2018. You know, we lost our friend Jim Patterson.
That's right.
And I ran in a special election.
I loved old Jim.
Yeah, I had.
That's a seat you came to Jim's seat.
It is.
Jim served with me.
He did. Okay.
Susan
was just with me at an event at Hazel Green High School up there in North Alabama. We dedicated some renovations that we were able to do through RC&D money and Nupi Cosby's group, and we dedicated that to Jim Patterson.
Rex, what area do you have in Madison? Do you have just Madison County?
I do. I'm all Madison County. So I started in Huntsville right there at Drake Avenue and go north to the state line. So I've got Huntsville, Meridianville, and Hazel Green.
You know, I went to Robert Adholt's daughter's wedding. We were there together.
That's right.
That was the nicest wedding. That was a who's who of Alabama politics.
That may have been an economic development event there. I mean, there's no telling how much money was spent in Madison County that night.
It really was. That is such a beautiful country club.
It is beautiful.
I saw that young boy Lomax. That's in his district.
James, it is. Yeah.
How many representatives y'all got from Madison now?
Oh gosh, counting Senate members, 14.
Well, that's rightfully so.
Yeah.
Because that's where the people live.
That's right.
One man, one vote.
Yeah, I think Mayor Battle told me we've seen about 34% growth just in the last 4 years.
Oh my God!
And that was just in Huntsville. And a lot of the growth is happening in my district, in the Meridianville and Hazel Green area.
Now, Tom Butler, he goes up into Limestone for his Senate district.
He does. Sam Gavan is my senator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. So Patterson had left. He didn't run for re-election, or there was a special election. He died, didn't he?
He died. He died in office. Sure did.
What year? In 2017 or 18?
In the fall of 2017.
Yeah. So we had a special election, and you came.
Yeah,
and then
2018. Yes, sir.
And then but your second term, you were made chairman of Ways and Means.
Yeah, sure was.
Well, you got a lot put on your plate in a hurry, didn't you?
Yeah, I was humbled by it, and the speaker and I talked a lot about it. From time to time, Cal South was the co-chair.
Yeah, that's right. He quit.
I told the speaker, I said, Kyle would make a great chairman. I was really working on a lot of law enforcement legislation and mental health, as you know. Yeah. And but I appreciate the confidence that the speaker put in me, and we will try not to fail.
Now, go back to that ARPA money, because for y'all had that one time, how much money was it?
Well, we had we had a little over $1 billion just in that what we appropriated that year. But a lot of that ARPA money went directly to the cities and counties.
What does ARPA stand for?
Yes, it's America Recovery Program.
Oh, it was a COVID money then.
Yep, it's COVID money.
Also, ARPA and COVID, the same
yes,
thing.
Sir.
So how much was it again?
Yeah, $1,060 million.
So you appropriated that along with whatever the general fund had.
Yep, we did that in a special session, 1 week there, and that's where we paid off that debt, and we put some additional funding in the general fund reserve, which has not been on the books very long at all. I think we've got $150 million in there now, and we need that going into the uncertainty of 2027. 2026, I think we're in really good shape. Interest rates are not dropping near the rate we thought they would. So, so that was a big year there, and I was glad we was able to separate that. Appreciate Governor Ivey.
Your first year?
Yeah, the first year as chairman.
But now let me ask you this, going back to that thing, the general fund historically has been and is smaller than the education trust fund budget. Most viewers don't know that.
Yeah, we were just shy, the bill we just passed last week in the House, just shy of $3.7 billion.
Is that the highest it's ever been?
That's the highest it's ever been.
Where did you give increases to?
Well, our major increases, in which was a priority of Speaker Ledbetter's, is our airport funding. The governor had $7.5 million in there, and we doubled that, took it to $15 million.
What was the reason for people who need airports for the industrial development?
We get calls from airports all the time, and you're in the Shelby days. We got
everybody money.
Shelby. We did, and airports were his priority. So we knew we'd have to kind of backfill that going forward. It does not automatically pull down federal dollars, but if you're approved for a federal grant, they can use that money, these state grant monies, for their matching dollars.
Well, let me ask you this: the real growth in the last 2 decades, and especially the last decade, has been in Madison and Baldwin counties.
It has.
Is y'all's airport adequate? Did y'all need it? State funds won't make a dent in what y'all. Shelby's done a lot for y'all.
Absolutely.
Shelby did a lot for Madison County.
And Mobile Airport,
Same
going
thing.
through that move down there, they've got a lot of needs. And certainly they'll apply for some of that grant funding too. And we got a beautiful airport up there, and it continues to grow and needs to grow. You
got direct flights to Washington, I bet, like that all day long.
We
don't
do,
you?
yes.
Because there's so much Washington connection with all that
absolutely
high tech industry and everything. One thing about it is we were talking about this before the show. You go into a group of your legislative district in Hazel Green or Meridianville or Huntsville, which is your district. If you ask a group, how many of y'all are like me that were born and raised here in Madison County, what percent would it be?
I was in Meridianville speaking to a group in the gym, and I began telling them a story. I was running a little bit late. I was telling them a story about going to a former hog farm up there. That I can remember going there with my grandfather and delivering eggs and doing some cattle business with them. And I go over there. It's a glamping now. The nice camping areas. And I was telling that story. I said, well, hey, probably about 400 people in there, maybe 375. I said, how many people grew up in Madison County? I think maybe 15 hands.
Is that out of 400 people?
Absolutely.
But you always like, it's almost like Atlanta. If you ask somebody in Atlanta, like you grew up in Atlanta, there wouldn't be anybody there. People in this state still don't comprehend the growth of population and industry and high tech. It's like the Silicon Valley of California and the Research Triangle of North Carolina was plucked down there. But you've seen it all your life.
Yeah, there was all cotton fields out there.
It was all cotton fields.
Huntsville, yeah.
Huntsville was a sleepy cotton town of 15,000 people when I was a young boy.
My father worked at Thicol.
What's that now?
Thicol, it's out on Redstone Arsenal.
So it's one of the first high-tech things?
Yeah, they tested rocket engines back then. And you would seem like you're going to another city, just going to Redstone Arsenal. And now we've encompassed all that now. And I remember my grandfather telling me, he said, there'll be a day, son, that you'll drive from Huntsville to Decatur or Athens, and you won't even know you left one city.
He knew that back then?
He said that, and sure enough, that's
Was he a farmer by profession?
I had one that was a farmer and one was a painter.
The one that told you that, which
he
one?
Was the painter.
That was your maternal grandfather?
Yeah.
So he sat down one time when you were a little boy.
Sure did.
And told you, what do you say?
You know, the old fairgrounds out there, you'd think you'd drive forever to get to the old fairgrounds, and now that's right there at Mid-City and all that development out there. It's just amazing. People talk about Toyota Engine Company. I remember going out there with Mayor Spencer and breaking ground out there in that cotton field when Toyota first broke ground. And now we got Toyota Mazda up there and Polaris. You can just go on and on. It's just amazing. FBI presence is just it's unbelievable what they've got at Redstone Arsenal now.
People can't comprehend it. I remember this other weekend when I was up there for that wedding, I thought I'd pass by neighborhoods, and I also went to that FBI thing and rode with Robert and Caroline Adderholt to that thing. And I told you before the show, it was interesting. I got looking at, we were riding on a bus. It was kind of not a secretive, but a safe, what do you call it, safety, when they didn't want anybody to be on that FBI thing.
Right.
So it was security. And so, but I was riding with Robert and Caroline, and I looked out, and I knew her daddy was a big farmer, and I says, Caroline, was this land your daddy's land? She said, it sure was.
Yeah.
It was McDonald land. And Albert McDonald was a famous state senator from Huntsville and Agriculture Commission for 2 terms.
Yep, that's right.
Hey, Rex, now so you grew up right in Huntsville, right in the country.
Like dead end of East Oakwood, and I can remember, of course, our house then was built, I think, 1961. I was born in 1959, but I can remember my father helped develop the ball field. What does that make you if you were born in 59? I'll be 66 this year.
That ain't nothing,
yeah,
you know?
66.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But I can remember my father being a part of about 8 or 9 gentlemen that went up there and literally cut a ball field out. And of course, now that's one of the largest ball fields in that area, and it's named after my father, the Royce B. Reynolds Field. He died of Lou Gehrig's disease early on. My first week in the police academy in 1980, he passed away.
People don't realize you were police chief at Huntsville for a long time.
I was, yeah.
Tell us about your career. But you also were like your best friend in the legislature is Andy Witt. And y'all have adjoining farms, and y'all are best friends down here.
Close to it. Andy, I didn't know. I otherwise didn't know Andy. I knew Andy's father. I had met him, but did not know Andy.
Was he a banker like Andy?
No. He was in construction and does a lot. Still lives right there in that area. But yeah, so I met Andy when we were both kind of running in 2019.
But you both of y'all came the same year.
We did.
Oh, you came
back
a little year
a little bit early. Yeah.
But let me ask you this.
Yeah, my career, I started out in 1980. I knew I wanted to be a police officer early on.
When you were a little boy?
I really was. I rode as a ranger program, started at 14 years old, and rode with my heroes, and went full time 1980. Had just very blessed to have a great career. Then Mayor Spencer interviewed me and about 11 others for police chief in 2004.
What year was for 2004?
2004, and so she picked me to be her chief and served there until 2007, and then with all that growth coming, I was at city council meetings, complaining that we're annexing land. Dallas Fanning, the former, over the planner there, that smart guy. And he kind of blueprinted all that annexation around there. A lot of that land, McDonald land, was part of that annexation. But I was complaining about the number of calls for service in that area, and so the mayor called me up there one day and said, "We're fixing to open up a position. You're going to apply for it. And it's going to be called the public safety director. You're going to take over the police and the fire department, and you're going to help us figure out where we're going to grow our fire departments, where we're going to build new ones, and." What I had showed her kind of a diagram of what my thoughts were of what the police department needed to look like, and kind of bring back a lot of the special operations division. So she bought into it, obviously, and I got to serve there. And then Mayor Battle came in and won the election in 2008.
Did he beat her, or he just run for his own?
No, he beat her in 2008. So I stayed on with him.
He's been on this show a couple of times.
Yeah, I tell the story. He showed up after the election that day and had a napkin. And he said, "This is me, this is you, and this is everybody else." And I said, "Well, Mayor, if you'll move me over and put a gentleman by the name of Dallas Fanning over there, over the planning engineer, then I'll be part of the team." And we did that. Spent 7.5 years with him, being his city administrator. That was awesome because, particularly, you think about where I'm at today. I probably didn't I didn't have a lot of these skills within the police department other than when I became chief, dealing with a small portion of the budget. But to have access and work with the budget at his level, and he's so smart about real estate and development and learning that part of it. It was just an honor to work for him.
I like Tommy Battle. But let me, I was thinking, you've seen the whole thing develop, the growth. Even though your granddaddy told you that, hadn't it just shocked you during your lifetime?
It really has.
Of course, you saw a lot of it while you were chief of police and while you were 24 years before you were chief.
Yeah, I did. I served 4 mayors there, all the way back to Mayor Davis, and then Mayor Hedinger, and then Mayor Spencer.
I served in the house with
Battle.
Hedinger.
Yeah.
We were in the house together.
Was that early 90s? Is that about right?
I liked old Hedinger.
Yeah, he's good.
Is he still living?
Absolutely, he's around. Sure
Is Loretta Spencer still living?
She is. She just wrote a book, and I went down and got to see her 2 weeks ago, I guess, and got her to sign a book and get my picture made with her. And
what does old Hedinger do with his day now? Do you ever see him much?
I see him some at the golf course.
He was a friendly guy.
Yeah, we're both members of the country club over there, and I see him over there some.
In Huntsville?
In Huntsville, yeah.
Well, tell him I said hello.
I will. He stays busy.
He and I were big buddies, and I was good friends with your predecessor, Patterson, too. He was my favorite people, old Jim.
Yeah, our sons went to the fire department together through the academy class, so we knew each other.
Jim would call me in the middle of the night. He had an idea about some bill. He was real interested about it. He was
passionate.
He was passionate about it, too. You get on some issue, and I thought, well, golly, Jim, I'm for it, but I don't want to talk about it all night.
Yeah,
He'd get to call me in the middle of the night about that. But,
I think I spent my first year in the legislature just trying to take care of all the promises he made. we had to get a fire station built, and I named it the Jim Patterson Fire Station, and then we just dedicated that training room up there. But yeah, good family. I still stay in touch with Susan. She was very supportive of my campaign, just very, very nice.
And your wife looked after Tommy's wife.
She did.
She passed away.
Mary was part of 7 girls that stayed with Eula instead of bringing in hospice, and we still have a little dinner club. Everybody gets together once a month.
Tommy Battle's been a good mayor. I tell you one thing, you've seen all these mayors and everything, and I've tried to write about the growth of Huntsville and the importance of it now being the largest city in the state, the most highest population, highest per capita income, everything like that, high tech. And people can't comprehend it till they actually see it on paper. But I've known Alabama history for years, and I've always credited the father of the Redstone Arsenal, which was the beginning of the growth of Huntsville, to John Sparkman.
Sure,
and I used to tell Tommy Battle, I said, y'all to just call your city Sparkmanville. He was the father of it, and y'all don't have to give him credit for it. But he started it. But of all the mayors or legislators, who do you think had the foresight? There's got to have been some good planning. I guess every one of those mayors have done a good job. Well, and you did some planning, and the guy down at Fanning.
They did.
Well, it was well planned. That growth's been handled pretty well.
It really has. And so Dallas, just like me, Dallas was there through all 4 mayoral administrations there. So he had his hand in that. He was also a 1-star general in the National Guard. So he had a lot of ties at the state level.
Is he still there?
He's not. He passed away.
Okay.
But I had dinner the other night at a school foundation fundraiser, and Sarah, his wife, sat at my table. And I asked her, I said, would Dallas have ever thought that this growth would end up being like that? She said, Rex, he really thought that the city would grow, but never thought it'd be like this.
Nobody did.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody. I don't think when Battle became mayor in 2008, he perceived the growth, but he's been mayor.
Yeah, that was a tough financial time for us in 2008.
Why was that? Because
that was the downturn in the economy.
Oh, okay.
And I'll never forget. We were working off site, during the transition, and I was telling him about some 243 vacancies we had. We really need to be a priority and fill those. And he said, Rex, no, we're not. I think we've got a serious downturn coming. And sure enough, he was right. And probably that decision he made kept us from doing layoffs during that time period.
Well, you know what? It speaks volumes that you were police chief of Huntsville, because my perception, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, Huntsville has always been an extremely clean and crime-ridden city.
We've been
Did
very
y'all put a
blessed.
priority on that, or you just the people who would live there were just more high scale?
I think both, Steve. I think both. I think good communities. We knew early on. We were one of the larger cities that started the community policing program early on. And but back during the late '80s, crack cocaine was getting bad, and we started seeing some shift. And We just made a political and operational decision that we're going to take back one street at a time, and we did that. And
so y'all had some problems in the 80s.
We did, yeah, in some areas, but I just can't say enough about the partnership between the government and the community.
You know, you've watched this thing before, and you handled some of the crime bills this time. Which ones did you handle?
Well, several. I just carried the governor's Back the Blue bill.
Right, that's what I was talking about. That's right.
Right, and
tell us about that one.
Well, we passed it in the House. You know, it gives kind of implied immunity to law enforcement officers, but only when they're working in the scope of their duties. And just as clearly as I spoke at the mic, for I think I was up there about 3.5 hours. It clearly also says if you act recklessly and outside the scope of your duty, you don't have any liability coverage. So, but both civilly and criminally. Yeah. It's a good bill.
Have other states had a similar legislation?
States are starting to go that direction.
Did you use another state's idea about it?
So Aaliyah and the governor's office began working that last fall, and then the governor happened to call me, closer to session, and asked me, would you carry the Back the Blue bill? And I said, well, yeah, I will. I really wasn't sure what I was agreeing to, but anything supporting law enforcement, I knew I could get on board, and then realized it was really kind of tort reform for law enforcement. And that, some of that language has been in the law for almost 50 years. It needed to be updated. It's more clarified in this bill. So I applaud the governor. It's a good piece of legislation.
That is a good piece of legislation. Yeah. And you being a former police chief, were the one that handled it because you understand law enforcement. I tell you one thing, we're sitting here in downtown Montgomery, and I'm always been around Montgomery all my life. The reason y'all came with the crime packages, is because of the exponential crime problems in Birmingham and Montgomery. But I've got to say this, the crime unit, whatever that is, and tell me exactly, I know Derek Cunningham, the sheriff, has been involved extensively, and Hal Taylor has done a real good job as a lead director. I think he's one of the best we've ever had.
He's exceptional. So Speaker Ledbetter kind of had a priority that he wanted to get involved because we were out of session. I remember him calling me, and he called others that had prior law enforcement, and he asked me about it. He said, we need to come together and decide what we can do to help them. I'm like, well, we really just need to be a resource to what I call them our CEO, our law enforcement CEOs, people like Derek Cunningham, Sheriff Cunningham, and so that's what we did. We brought some of the law enforcement professionals to the table. Clearly our role was some legislation, but also was some funding. So we love what they're doing in Montgomery. That task force can be replicated anywhere in the state if we had a serious problem going on. So we plussed them up $3.5 million.
So you gave them just for Montgomery,
we
the whole
did,
thing.
And then the speaker also wanted to expand what our Aaliyah presence was in the State House. His vision was that not only there, but we have these busloads of kids come down here. We're here walking from event to event. Families are. So we need to expand it anyway going into the new facility, the new State House, but we're going to start doing that here, and they're going to expand their patrol area around the State House.
Well, now, tell me exactly. It's made a difference.
It really has.
Here in Montgomery.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got some of the best law enforcement people. Y'all came with legislation, you and the speaker did, and Hal Taylor, the lead director, is on board. Then the sheriff, Derek Cunningham, here is on board. Who else if any federal people been involved in that task force? What are they doing exactly? They made a difference.
Yeah, Attorney General's involved. Steve Marshall's his criminal investigation team, and they are partnering with Montgomery PD. But it's amazing. I had to go over and look. I carried that wiretap bill back 3 years ago for Aaliyah for trafficking in drugs. And we had to get the sunset off that, so they brought me over and showed me some of the work they were doing. It's amazing. I mean the organized crime that they are disrupting, and they're disrupting street crime to the point that they can see it shifting. It's moving out of Montgomery. So I really applaud them for what they're doing.
It's made a difference. It really has.
It really has.
And you're right, because I've written this that legislators like yourself and people from upscale communities around the state. Jebbo Wagner, we were walking over from the Civic Center one night. He said, Steve, I'm scared to walk around up downtown Montgomery. Me and Marilyn were almost accosted the other day.
Yeah.
And I think
we just had a small pursuit when we ended last week down here. That ended with a crash there in front of the State House, and an offender fled. Yeah, and the troopers. I think it was kind of a joint effort between the Aaliyah presence there at the State House and the one that was chasing the guy. So it's much needed. I'm certainly glad to see that we're able to support them and expand them through our resources.
It's made a difference, hasn't it?
It really has.
And so Reed Ingram's behind us, some of the funding for that
Yep,
thing too.
Absolutely.
Who are some of the members on your Ways and Means Committee? We only got about a minute and a half left.
Yeah, so Paul Lee, long time
Dothan?
served
So
member.
he's chairman of Health and on the Ways and Means Committee.
Laura Hall, Chris Blackshear is my
Laura.
co-chair. Andy Witt's on our.
Chris Blackshear from Phoenix City is over from Smith Station.
Yep, AJ
Is
McCampbell.
vice chairman.
Yep.
McCampbell's on there.
Jeff Sorrells is on there.
Okay, you got two from the Wiregrass.
Yeah, we got Bubba Underwood from over in the Shoals. We got Bill Lamb from the Tuscaloosa
He's a
area.
good man. Well, he's a former city manager.
Yep, we got Brett Easterbrook is on there, and Arnold Mooney's on my committee. So yeah, got a good
committee.
They really are. I can't say enough good about them.
You running again, aren't you?
I do plan to run.
Good.
Sure do.
Well, y'all got to qualify pretty soon.
We sure do.
And you probably continue as Ways and Means Chairman. I don't see much turnover in the House.
I don't. I mean, I'll serve the Speaker as long as he wants me to, and I'm certainly if on down the road if something changes, then that could also impact my position. But hey, I was just here to really help law enforcement, so this has been a huge plus for me.
I was talking to the Speaker yesterday about that 4th of July thing. He asked me the first one how much that thing has grown. I'm gonna write a column about it. You going to that this year?
Mayor Battle and I will be there.
Yeah, he's at Battle's made it every one of them.
Oh, them women bring him tomatoes and onions, and he's a big hit over there.
Yeah, because that's close by. They probably same media market.
Speaker Ledbetter, it's just amazing the job he's doing.
He's done a great job.
He has branched that office out and touched so many tentacles in Alabama that's made us stronger and safer, in my opinion.
He's a great guy.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you taking time. Folks,
Yes,
our
sir.
guest tonight's been Rex Reynolds, who is chairman of the House Ways and Means General Fund Committee, represents Huntsville and Madison County in the legislature, and he was kind enough to come down here in the middle of the session and talk about the budget and state politics with me, and we thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.